Good morning. We are continuing to look for the Bible stories, and we are now moved to the judges. The people and the judges were people who was chosen by God to save the people of Israel from the suffering and hardship from the other nations. Do you remember the reason that they were experienced the suffering and hardship from the other nations? Let's see. The people of Israel continually turned away from God. They committed a sin and worshipped the first God, not God who saved them from the Egypt. So they experienced the suffering from the other countries' attack. However, whenever people of Israel asked and cried out for God's help, God saved them from the suffering by choosing the judges. The judges were a person of God who was chosen by God to save the people of Israel. Once again, people of Israel turned away from God and worshipped the first gods. So they were under suffering from the Midianite attack. The Midianite took the grains and livestock from the Israel. To avoid them, the people of Israel hid and lived in caves. The people of Israel cried out for God's help, and God heard their cries and planned to save the people of Israel by choosing the judges, who was chosen as the judges. This man, his name is Gideon, just like other Israelites. Gideon feared the Midianite, so Gideon hid in the winepress to thresh the wheat secretly. At the moment, an angel from God came to Gideon. The angel said, God is with you, mighty warrior. Go and rescue Israel from the power of Midian. It means that God chose Gideon as a judge. But Gideon was afraid. He could not believe that God would save Israel through him, who is weak. A little time later, Gideon brought some wolves and asked God the sign, which shows that God chose him. So he bring the wool and pray like this. God, you said you would help me save Israel. I will put some oils on the floor. Let there be dew only on the oil, but let all the ground dry. Then I will know what you said is true. What would be happen? As Gideon prayed, God showed the sign. Can you see the dew only on the oils and the land around it was dried? Next day, Gideon asked again, God, let me ask one more thing. Please let me make one more test. Let the oil be dry while the ground around it gets wet with the dew. That night, God did that very thing, like this. Through this, Gideon assured that God will save Israel through him. Gideon prepared a battle against the Midianite. 32,000 people joined the army of Israel. But God sent them back home, except the 300 soldiers. It was because God won't let the Israel know that they can win against the Midian, not by the number of the soldiers or by their power, but by the power of God. However, the number of soldiers of Midian was much bigger than 300. It seemed that they cannot win the war. How could Israel win the battle? Gideon commanded the soldiers to prepare trumpet. Can you see? And the jar in which there is a burning torch. In the middle of the night, with the instruction from Gideon, the Israel soldiers blew their trumpet, woo, and smashed the jar. Ding, ding. And they shouted while holding the burning torch, "A sword for the Lord!" The soldiers of Midian were surprised, began, began shouting and running away. And in that confusion, they fought against each other, not with Israel. Through this, Israel won the battle against Midian. As the judge, God chose the Gideon who thought himself as weak, and God made him to be prepared with a patience. And through him, God saved the Israelites. Sometimes we feel that we are small and we are weak, like a Gideon felt about himself. But our God, who worked through us, is mighty and powerful. See you next Sunday.